asking that Esther rose up and courageously went to see the king. For tension has been building to this moment. Will the king allow her to speak, or will she receive the death sentence? And it is worth noting here actually that there is actually historical evidence of the Persian kings having this type of rule in place. That they would have a sort of a man with an axe next to the king ready for this purpose, to kill the inappropriate attendee. And so it's not just sort of a exaggeration in the story, it's a historical reality that Esther was facing. And we see that in our story, the king does actually, he holds out his scepter, which we're told is a sign that she will be welcome to come and speak. And so we get this good news. Esther has been welcomed to come before the king and speak to him. And the king, in acknowledging her, he obviously realizes that there is a request and that this isn't just a social visit, that Esther isn't going just for a bit of fun, because she wouldn't risk her life for that purpose. So he realizes there is a request, and he asks Queen Esther what it is that she wants, and that she can have up to half of his kingdom if she wanted. This is, if you're again a bit savvy with your links between Old Testament and New Testament, it's the same offer that Herod gives to the daughter of Herodias in Mark chapter 6, where she asks for the head of John the Baptist. Herod offers her, says he can have up to half of his kingdom on the request. And it is thought that perhaps this is just a sort of a common saying back in the day, which shows, the king is basically willing to generously grant whatever your request is. And it allows us here in our story today to see that Esther has the favour of the king. He has welcomed her to speak and is willing to listen to her request and grant her the wish, which is all at this moment, it is all paving the way for God's rescue of his people. And we're seeing it here in the favour shown to Esther by King Xerxes. And so with this opportunity, Esther can make her request and save the day, or potentially go the other way and anger the king. But what does she decide to do in this moment? She's been offered this great opportunity to have this request. The king is feeling very generous towards her. Well, she asks the king to invite Haman for a banquet that she has prepared, which is maybe an unusual reaction at this time. And so the king quickly gets Haman, and we are told that they eat and drink wine. Now, we know the king is quite suggestible when he's drank a bit too much wine. It was in this state that led to the King Xerxes to get rid of Queen Vashti and find a replacement for her right at the start of our story, which led to Esther's rise to this fortuitous position. So we know the situation. And again, in this moment, in this time of having drunk a bit of wine, he asks Esther again what it is that she wants. He realizes that it wasn't just to have a banquet. That was the situation. And now is the perfect time for Esther to ask. He is merry on wine and probably very happy with Esther's banquet. She will have a lot of favour with him in this moment. But again, Esther doesn't actually make the request. Maybe in this moment she has in mind of what happened to Queen Vashti when she upset the king with him in this state. Maybe she thought if she popped this question to save the Jewish people going against his previous decree, which is a very serious thing to ask, that actually she would end up in the position of Queen Vashti, effectively banished and with there being no hope. Maybe she thought it would be worse. We're not told. But what it does give us a sort of indication is that there may be good wisdom in Esther's approach of taking it slowly in this moment. And so she says to the king, if the king regards me with favour, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfil my request, Let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question. Basically, if you're going to grant my request, then let us eat tomorrow and I will ask. She effectively commits the king to accepting her request. If he denies it now, it would potentially cause quite a bit of embarrassment for him in his courts. He has pretty much promised 3 times now to grant her request. And this time it commits him again without any conditions if he comes to the banquet. And this is all done it will all be done in front of people. It's not just the 3 of them who are there. His courts will be around as well, so they will have heard his promises to Esther. This is a public declaration, and he's committed to granting her request. The anticipation in the story is building up, and we think we can see where it is going. We can see the divine providence setting everything up to save the day through Mordecai and Esther. The king is showing great favour towards Esther, so what a good moment this is. But there's yet another plot twist in our story, and it feels a bit like maybe one of those plot twists you get in the rom-coms, if you ever watch those types of films, where you have the main characters who have their own lives, they're starting to fall in love with one another. One realises this love and goes to get the other. And when you think, yes, this is the moment the 2 are finally coming together, there's a twist. And the other person, maybe they're seeking somebody else at this time who they shouldn't be seeking. Maybe they've seen a situation and got the wrong end of the stick, thinking, oh no, they're not interested in me. But actually that person is really interested in them. And so they then go their separate ways, and they manage to get in this extra 30 minutes in the film. We all know what's going to happen, but we just got to wait for this plot twist to unfold. And then eventually the characters sort of give up on their chases and realise that it's the other one that they actually want, and they get together in the end. It feels a bit like that sort of plot twist. But this isn't a rom-com, but it's a similar sort of twist, I feel, where we think Esther is about to go. She's about to go and get her people saved. But from verse 9 to the end of a chapter, the story suddenly flips to Haman, the man who put the whole plan into place of destroy the Jews, and it suddenly goes to him and he goes away. And we get this twist. We initially see that he is a very happy Haman. He is full of pride because of his importance, as only he was invited to this banquet by Queen Esther with her and the king. He's suddenly got this position of prominence. And you can understand that, can't you? If Queen Camilla and King Charles invited just you to a banquet at Buckingham Palace, so that you could just be with them, eat with them, dine with them, chat with them, have a merry evening with them, you would probably go away feeling very privileged. You would probably be very happy. You will want to boast, but not necessarily in a bad way, but you would want to go and boast about it to your friends, about how King Charles and Queen Camilla hosted you especially, because you will feel important. You can understand maybe where Haman is coming from in this moment. But rather than going home happy, his bitter heart and pride took over. And once again, we come to Mordecai. Haman, he saw Mordecai at the king's gates, where quite often we seem to meet Mordecai, just waiting there. And Mordecai, once again, he did not rise in respect of Haman or fear him. He didn't show Haman honour that Haman felt it was deserved to him because of his importance. Mordecai, once again, was being faithful to his God and only showing honour to God and not to the one scheming against God's people. It was this act in chapter 3 which led to the instruction for all Jews to be destroyed. And here it is again, Mordecai refusing to honour Haman in the midst of Esther's plan, where Esther was trying to win the favour of the king, possibly trying to win favour of Haman, so we can have this good fortune to turn this decree around. Here's Mordecai showing great courage and bravery. To many, this might look like foolishness, It's foolishness, angering one of the most powerful men in the land when you're trying to turn over this own man's edict to destroy them. But Mordecai, he chose faithfulness and to stay firm against evil. He wasn't going to compromise. He was going to stay true to what he believed. It is great courage and great bravery. And just as Esther as well was showing courage in God's timing with her sort of holding off and delaying on her request and going before the king despite the risk to her, Mordecai is also showing great courage in God's timing, but in a different way, by doing something in the moment, not by playing the long game. We don't see the result of this action in this chapter, but this moment, it is pivotal for where the story goes next and the destiny of Haman and the whole people of Israel will be going back at the end of the story. The act of courage, it marks a big step in God's victory over evil and the deliverance of his people. We are told that this act of courage enraged Haman. Though he managed to actually restrain himself in the moment, we are told, which maybe was unexpected. Maybe he thought that he would attack Mordecai or something, but he restrained himself. And he goes back and he plots with his wife and friends what to do. After boasting about this great banquet that he's been to and his great position of privilege that he's got, he shares about Mordecai and how he can have no satisfaction if Mordecai is there. Even though he's got this great privilege, he has no satisfaction in it because Mordecai was there at the king's gate, not giving him the honour he wanted. And this great bitterness, it gets in the way. And it strikes me that actually this is probably true for many of us today in our daily lives, where we end up maybe being a bit like Haman here, maybe not to the same extremes as Haman, but similar. We find ourselves, we want to be like Mordecai, the person who will stand up for our faith when tyranny comes our way. But instead we often live like Haman. We hold on to personal pride. We hold bitterness against others who have wronged us. So much so that bitterness consumes us and gets in the way of our satisfaction. It can be that this bitterness, it stops us from worshipping. It might stop us from fulfilling our ministry, from partaking in the service in a way that we are used to. It may stop us from praying, stop us from enjoying fellowship with one another. This bitterness, it gets in the way of our satisfaction, gets in the way of even being faithful people, faithful to God. And it is worth reflecting on this. Is there any unforgiveness, any bitterness, any pride in your hearts which stands against somebody, which is stopping you from finding joy that you need to let go of, which is stopping you from finding satisfaction in our Lord Jesus? Is any of that in your heart that you need to let go of? It's worth reflecting on that as we reflect on Haman. But back to our story. Haman and his wife and friends, they come up with a plot to kill Mordecai. He is to build a huge pole or gallows, 75 feet we heard, so that's pretty big. Over 12 times my height, pretty big. And he wants to have Mordecai impaled upon it. That's the plan. He was going to ask the king in the morning and then go to the banquet and enjoy the banquet with Mordecai being dealt with. But that's quite a big twist to our story, isn't it? Everything seemed to be going smooth, going swimmingly. Esther was winning the favour of the king. They were going to have another banquet. The king had effectively promised to grant her whatever her request is. And suddenly, the plot changes. Mordecai is now at risk of death. It's going to throw the whole plan out. And maybe Esther should have asked a bit quicker. We don't quite know what's going to happen until we read on. It leaves us on a bit of a cliffhanger. It looks as though Esther's plans are going to fail and that Mordecai, the hero of our story, is going to die. But thankfully we see in the next couple of chapters, which we'll look at over the coming weeks, how God is actually in control of things and how his timing is perfect. And so there is good news to come. And in fact, we see in the incoming chapters that there is a great irony in the plan, in that we will see that it is by this very plot of Haman that Haman will meet his demise. And I can't help but wonder if there's meant to be some allusion to the cross with this pole. The cross, which was a very public method of killing people by hanging them for all to see. Very similar to the design of the pole of the gallows here, designed to be very high so all could see, so Mordecai could be publicly humiliated. But not only that, there's this whole reversal that happens and that we will hear about. Something that was meant for evil, something meant to bring about shame and defeat, is turned into something that is used for victory over evil and to bring about deliverance. And that is exactly what the cross is. Something that was designed for evil to bring about shame and defeat was used for great victory and for the deliverance of God's people. It just feels to me like it's yet another echo in this book of a greater truth, pointing towards something far greater that's going to come. It's not a perfect image, as I say, these echoes are never perfect images, but it just strikes me of an echo of God's plan. And for us today, as we reflect on this story, on the twists and turns of this passage, let us have these things in mind. One, that there is courage to be had in God's timing. We need to have that same courage and to trust in God's timing too. We have seen that both Esther and Mordecai show great courage, and that they are doing so in God's timing. Esther by biding her time, not rushing into things, not being rash, but following a time of fasting and praying. She took 3 days before she went to the king to pray and to fast. And she then comes out from the fast following a plan and following wisdom. And with Mordecai showing courage in the moment. And it is that courage which turns things around. So for us, let us be courageous in our faith. But let us seek to be courageous in God's timing. Sometimes we will need to show it in the moment. Other times we will need to take our time and follow God's wisdom for the opportunity. No two situations are necessarily the same. Sometimes we've just got to pause and seek God, like we said we were going to do this year. Pause and seek God rather than rushing ahead with ourselves. But other times we will need to speak up in the moment. If God is calling us to do it, we will just have to go and do it. And that's just for situations of life. And the next thing for us to notice is that pride and bitterness will bring about destruction. That is what will occur to Haman, who allowed it to destroy his satisfaction. It is also a truth that is taught by Jesus too, that pride will bring about our fall, pride will bring about our destruction. This is what he teaches. But let us reflect on our own hearts and find where pride and bitterness are preventing us from being satisfied in the Lord and preventing us from serving him, preventing us from being able to be courageous in God's timing, because we're allowing bitterness and pride to take the lead, puffing ourselves up, putting our own confidences ahead of our confidence in the Lord. And so we get things wrong, maybe acting rashly in the moment, not quite according to God's plan, but maybe acting against other people or just letting other people bring us down and not allowing God to be our lead. And then the final thing is that God is at work. And he can use what is intended for evil for good. Let's just remember that we may not be seeing his work obviously before us. It may not be immediate before us either. It may just seem very ordinary in the moment. But God is at work in his timing. And through the cross, he has already won the victory over evil. So we can trust him. We can stand firm just like Mordecai, who trusted in God's deliverance. We've already heard he trusted that God would bring deliverance. If it wasn't through Esther, it would be through somebody else. He trusted God's promises. And so we, like Mordecai, can trust God's promises and stand firm in the face of evil. We don't have to compromise, but we can stand firm for Jesus Christ, stand firm for our faith. And we can sing his praises because he is working, even if he might seem absent in the moment, even if the plot twists of life overwhelm us and we don't know where that twist is going. We're fortunate in Esther because we can see where the twist is going because we've got the full story. But in life we don't necessarily know, but there is one thing that we do know. We do know the end of the story. We may not know how we get to the end of a story, but we have the spoiler already because Jesus has won the victory. Jesus has claimed you as his own. And Jesus is going to bring about a new creation, a new earth where evil is no more, where tears will be wiped away, death is defeated, and we will live in peace and rejoice with him. So we know the end of a story. So we can stand firm in the moment, trust in God's timing and trust he is going to deliver his people because the work is already done. And that is a wonderful hope. And we can see how God works in our story in Esther. Amen.